agenda for today is Hoard is gonna start off with some small roadmaps regarding TeamsNation, the next conference. I think it is, Chris, right? And just after that, we will have Dredge that I just mentioned. He's not part of our TeamsNation crew, but he was also a speaker for today. And Chris Hoard as well will be speaking after that. So Chris, you take it away from here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks ever so much, Adam. And yeah, I mean, TeamsNation 2022, it seems a long time away, but in fact, it will come around very, very quick. And as Adam said, we typically did the conference twice a year. We've done kind of 4 conferences, but every 6 months we did a conference, and that's kind of evolved and got bigger over time. So we had a rethink after the last one. The last one was in the middle of May, and we were just trying to kind of see out into the I guess the community and have a look at all the events going on. And we did kind of try to take or should I say, accommodate for the fact that a lot of people wanted to run their own events, and at the same time they kind of had a little bit of meeting fatigue, as it were. So what we kind of decided is to kind of go ahead and instead of, I guess, booking it at the end of or towards the back end of this year, which would have been October or November time, we decided to put, kind of just moving forward, just do 1 a year instead of 2. That gives us a bit of time from an organizational perspective to catch up. Teams moves ever so fast, so giving it that little bit of extra time means that you'll get completely different subjects the next time that the conference comes around. But also, as well as it gives a little bit of space for other people who want to do events. It takes a lot going into a TeamsNation event. Last time we had 115 sessions, well over 150 speakers. It was a lot of coordination, and it took probably about 6 or 7 months worth of planning, and pretty much 9 if you count the ideas and the iterations on top of that. So basically, we're at a point now where we're kind of that 2 or 3 months past the conference that has just been, and we're really going back into the cycle of beginning to think about the next conference again. So we wanted to kind of be open and transparent and kind of show you like kind of what the roadmap looks like and what we're guided by and what our North Star is. So that North Star is, of course, the event that will be taking place on April the 6th. But here you can see that the timescale really does kind of go back 9 months, and we're really going to be starting to think about that next conference next month in August and in September. And we're going to start thinking about and tossing around ideas of what tracks do we want within that, what is the format, what kind of new innovations can we come up with that keep us pushing for a better event. And then you can see that it's really in that September time where we start to put the logistics into play. So what we mean by logistics is how many rooms do we need, how many tents do we need, how many sessions do we think that we're going to have, how many moderators, how many organizers, how many leads, and so forth. And so we kind of put all that together and almost map what it is that we're doing. In October/November, what we do is we then go and set it all up. So we'll set up the tenant, we'll set up, for example, the rooms, the structure, we'll start writing the documentation for the speakers. It's also around that time that we start talking to what we call headliners of the conference. So these are people typically from Microsoft who will be speaking for us because we need to give them as much, I guess, in advance for their schedules. Then to kind of at the end of this year in December, that's when I can kind of say right now that we'll open that call to speakers. So that call for speakers will be over the Christmas period, December and January. We'll be looking to wrap that up at the end of January, which gives us roughly a 2.5 month lead time going into the conference. After we've gone through that call for speaker, what we then do is we go into what we call a commit phase. So we have to make sure and cross-check with all the speakers, make sure there's no session conflicts, make sure that they can definitely commit to that date, that they're happy with the sessions that they are. And as you can see kind of at the top here, kind of moving above all the blue boxes are all the kind of actions that are going alongside it. So we have our registration period. We're gonna start to register in December alongside the opening of the call to speaker. We'll have a call for moderators again. I'm sure there'll be quite a few that want to come to that in order to be able to own the tracks. And we'll be doing the promotion alongside that registration and that call to speaker. So if you start seeing things crop up on YouTube or LinkedIn or Twitter, that's where you can tell that we'll start to do our promotion. I'm sure Vesku will be doing some videos again this time around, as they seem to work last time. But as you can see, right at the very top is just to make everyone aware that there are lots of great events with Microsoft Teams going on throughout the year. So in September, we've got the hybrid event with Comsverse that's happening here in the UK. In October and over the November period, we've got Teamsdagen in Sweden, South Coast Summit in the UK, Collab Summit that's taken place in Dusseldorf in Germany, and Microsoft 365 Chicago, amongst many others. And I'm sure that, you know, during the period of September, October, and November, somewhere within that, we're also going to see Microsoft Ignite and those dates kind of confirmed by Microsoft. And then going into the new year, we've got Modern Workplace Paris. That's by Patrick Guillemet and the AMS team, going all the way through to Scottish Summit and MVP Summit that usually take place in the spring. So there's lots of events that you can go to before you go to the TeamsNation Community Conference in 2022. But we just wanted to give you a bit of insight into how kind of long that we actually work on this, and how long that if you do decide to come to the conference in 2022, we've been thinking about it right from about now. So if you do have any ideas during the ideation phase, then, you know, please feel free to drop them in our TeamsNation group on Meetup, or feel free to reach out to us if you've got a great idea that you want to see with a conference, because now's really the time where we kind of have to think about what it is that we're doing and the ways that we want to go about it. So that's really just it for the roadmap. I hope it's been insightful. It's not something that we put together kind of 2 weeks or even a month before the event. This is really is a kind of a labor of love. It kind of goes for most of the year. We've kind of had our break now in terms of the conference, so we're back and actively working on it. So yeah, that's probably it for the roadmap, Adam.
Great, thank you. All right, it's time for our speakers. Paul is gonna start off by talking about why do intranets fail. Are you ready, Paul?
I am indeed, yep.
Awesome, then you can just start your presentation.
So let me share my screen and hopefully that comes through to everyone.
Looks good over here.
Brilliant stuff. So yeah, I've come along today to talk to people around about why do intranets fail? And I don't know, people work in different industries and in different types of roles out there, but something I'm seeing in my working job is there's a lot of noise currently around intranets and modernizing people's intranets and looking at the intranet aspect. So that's what I wanted to do a talk today about. Some of the stuff I'm experiencing, some of the stuff I'm seeing out there, some of the tools that are out there now with 365 that allows you to modernize your intranet and look at how you can actually look at stopping your intranet from failing and have that successful experience, I guess, of using them. So a little introduction to myself. I work for a company called Hable here in the UK. I am the Building Smart Workplaces lead, bit of a mouthful, but look after that area of the business. So what I tend to do day to day is speaking to lots of organizations and looking at how they could work smarter with the tools within Microsoft 365. Hable don't work in any other platform apart from Microsoft 365. So we really look at the tools around what could make people work smarter, basically. So things like automation, workflows, getting better use out of Teams and using Teams for more than just that way of communicating and attending meetings and so on. So that's where I sort of sit in the world of things. Put my social contacts up on there. So I've got a blogging site that I blog on, not very often. Can't remember the last time I did do a blog on there, but the link's there if you want to see some of my older stuff. On LinkedIn as well, Mr. Paul Dredge, you want to find me on Twitter as well. And then I run a YouTube channel. Mixed content on the YouTube channel, mostly to do around Microsoft Teams, but very recently I've started doing weekly updates on the Microsoft updates world of things, because again, something that I always get asked by a lot of people is like, how do you keep up to date with what's new in the Microsoft world of things? So I try and do a weekly show on consolidating some of those different updates and talking about what they mean to actual people rather than just the Microsoft wording behind it. I am a Microsoft MVP and I have been since the beginning of June, so very, very new to the MVP world of things, and a bit late joining this session, but I think Adam spoke about how I've come on board to the team with TeamsNation and really excited around what the future holds there in that aspect. But if we have a look then at intranets and what it actually is, as always, when I talk about things, one of the first things I like to do is actually explain what it is we're going to talk about. So I went on to Bing search. Yes, I am a user of Bing, prefer using Bing over Google, not sure why, but seems to be my default homepage still, not changed it and just seem to stuck with it. But went on to Bing search and typed in, what is an intranet? And this is what it came back with. So a local or restricted communications network, especially a private network created using World Wide Web software. I feel like that's a very old definition of what an intranet is, but that's what it is. If you go onto the internet and do a search of what is an intranet, that is the first result you will get back based on what an intranet is. So to kind of decode that, really, it's creating a network like a website that's internally accessed by people in your organization. It's a way of pushing out communications and such like that. When I looked at when an intranet was first created, the date I found, not 100% sure if this is correct, but again, doing a little web search, it was the first birth of the internet was around 1994 to 1996, was when people are saying the first intranet was created. I think there's still earlier versions of an intranet or some sort of aspect of what an intranet did, but that's when it was first created. And if I look at that, that's quite some time ago. And I don't think the aspect of an intranet has really changed since then, because people are still using it for that. People have changed. The way we're working has changed. The purpose of what we want from different aspects of work has changed. But for me, an intranet hasn't evolved over that time. If we look at what an intranet is used for, then it's a place for organizations to push out updates and alert people of those organizational comms. It's used for storing information and files. So a prime example is policies and business files that people need access to. It's a way of connecting teams together, connecting employees, a way for people to collaborate across different departments, different directives, and so on. And it helps employees with a voice. So it helps them get a voice in your organization. So there's some of the things what I've picked out of what an intranet is used for. I did another search as well around example intranets and what they look like. So these aren't actual intranets of organizations that use. So these are probably websites that are advertising to build intranets through and giving you templates and so on like that. But I thought, let's have a quick look. And looking at the examples, it was obvious that comms is one of the key things to push out for an intranet. Pretty much every example I looked at, one of the first things on the intranet homepage was comms, company news, updates around what your company's doing, how they're doing in the business, and so on. And I love that picture that I've put at the forefront, a very old looking intranet type site. So this is like really old internet site that looks like it's been created. Not sure why it's got the Dory picture on there saying I should really get back to work. Oh, look, another blue link. And I think that sums up intranets. Within intranets, there's lots of clicky things to click on, buttons to press, and it's quite hard to navigate around a lot of the intranets I've seen out there. So I thought that picture, so I've put it in really old dated internet, but I thought it's a nice picture that sums up what I've experienced. And I want to put the question out to you here today. So if you want to use the meeting chat, just to see what people's thoughts are on this, but why do you think intranets fail? Why are they failing? Why aren't they seen as successful? So if you want to just pop something in the chat, we're brilliant. If you want to come off mute and just have your voice heard, I think you probably have to raise your hand for us to take you off mute. It'd be good to see if anyone's got any examples of why they think an intranet fails. So Robert, I see you've raised your hand. Do you want to go? I think you can unmute.
Yeah, thank you. I was actually thinking of asking you this question at the end, but we've had several iterations of an intranet over the years, and consistently it comes back to people aren't able to, they don't use it in the way that we use the internet. And on the internet we have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have websites, and we seem to be able to manage the information flow. But inside a company, people don't seem to be able to have the same experience, and we haven't been able to noodle through and figure out why, because the information is there, but it doesn't seem to be focused in the way people can consume it. Brilliant.
That is really, really good example of what I see as well. I can see Jay has put around not enough focus on what employees want, need to be successful and how they want to use it. So again, similar sort of thing what you were saying there, Robert, around it's not focused on that person. Is anyone else want to come off mute, or anyone else want to pop something in the chat around why you think intranets aren't seen as successful? Or maybe you are seeing intranets as successful. Okay, if anyone wants to add anything, please do. But I guess people who may have joined today to actually find out why they aren't successful, or why they're seen as failing. And that there's a study done by a research company, put the name at the bottom there, around 10 reasons why intranets are failing. And these are the top 10 that they've categorized. And I'd have to agree with most of these around why an intranet fails. And just in this actual document, I can link people to it at the end if they want to, but in this actual document, they're reporting that 90% of intranets are seen as a failure and are still failing today. And I think that's massive. It is that 90% out there are failing or seen as failures. And it makes you think, well, why do people spend so much time and commit so much effort into this then, if it's seen as a big failure? Because to me, if you're looking at that, stats and so on, it's putting information into something that doesn't work. And why do we keep persisting with that? I mean, number one, unclear governance is a key one. Number two, for me, it should be number one, and I'm surprised it's not, is the purpose is unclear. So many times working with organizations are like, yeah, I want an intranet. Well, what's the purpose behind this? I don't know, it just sounds good. I want an intranet. It sounds exciting. Sounds like it might solve our problems, but there's no purpose around it. Robert put there, number 3 is a big one. So executives unengaged. Yeah, you need that buy-in from the top level and having them engaged for it to actually be productive and serve that purpose. It sort of goes back into that purpose is unclear. 4 is something that's very popular, is poor user experience. Clicking through links and links of information, trying to find it. Yes, we've got search functionalities, but people don't like using search. People just want that information. And I was a little bit late to this session because, excuse my voice, I was doing a Sharepoint training session, and we spoke a little bit about intranet and actually bringing content to the surface. And someone who was on the session said, yeah, but you've got the search. Why do you need to use metadata? No, why do you need to think about links when you can use metadata in the search and so on. And it's because people don't want to search. People just want to click on a link onto a page and that information is there that's relevant to them. They don't want to have to go off and find that information to consume, because then that they don't see it. And Chris has said stale, outdated content is a big one. It is. And that's one of the big downfalls of some organizations' intranets, is that it gets set up, but then it's not actively updated. People don't constantly put information, feed the beast as such with those information. So the content is very out of date. What you'll also find is that sometimes people duplicate documentation, so then forget to update the version that's in an intranet because they've updated it somewhere else that people are used to accessing. And you end up people getting confused and seeing different versions and so on. Number 6 is a huge one for me, is around not personalized. A key bit of information I've been fed back is that people don't use intranets because when they click into it, it's organization-wide comms, information, news. It's not relevant to them. Why do they want to know what Ruth has done in HR and the great bit of work they've done there? Why do they want to know about a dog walking club that started on a Wednesday afternoon after work? Why do they want to know about some customer information and so on? What they want to know is what's relevant to them. And that's a big aspect of personalizing that experience for them, because they're just getting that comms. It's that bombardment, isn't it? Comms still happens through email. Lots of people get emails or comms and don't read it because it's just news that's not relevant to them. People are busy. They haven't got time to sift through the stuff that's not relevant to them to find what is relevant. So making that information personalized is a really key thing. Failed deployment, search didn't work. So some top things there, and I'm sure a lot of you heard those things, not just with intranets, with other things that have been rolled out. And I think with an intranet, there sometimes isn't that communication piece around adoption of it. It's just released. We'll just release an intranet. Everyone knows we've got it. We'll give it some funky name. It's going to be brilliant. This all singing, all dancing thing we've created. Spent a lot of time doing it, but then again, it's not being used for its purpose because they're just moving stuff that was there before. As I said earlier on, a lot of people are looking at SharePoint for intranets now, so they may be paying for a third-party bit of software, but bringing it into Microsoft 365, we're using more of the 365 platform. But again, they're just lifting and shifting what didn't work before and putting it in a new environment, hoping it's going to work in this new environment when they're not actually thinking about what has stopped it from working. So one thing I always say to an organization, if they're looking at doing an intranet, is actually, well, why don't you run some user groups? Why don't you send out some questionnaires to your staff about what they want from an intranet? Before you even look at building it, before you even looking at what content's going to go into it, hear from your organization first, because that's going to give you great insight on what you should build moving forward. So they're like the top 10 reasons why intranets are failing or are classed as failures. Really stands out. With the new world of working, we say new world. So we've gone from face-to-face working. As we know, COVID happened, big pandemic around having to remote work and so on. It's really changed how people are working across the world. But now as we slowly start to go back into the office, as we start to, like restrictions are opening up in different countries, and we're sort of going back into, I guess, a kind of familiar way of working, people are still going to be remote working. And a lot of organizations have said, we're not going to force people to be back and so on. So we work in this hybrid manner. And I think this is where intranets are going to play a really key aspect into this, is around hybrid working, because people are going to experience different things, whether they're working in an office and seeing people face to face, having that communication. Some people working from home and not having that face to face experience, maybe not being involved in some of these conversations or updates that are happening because they are working from home. Then we need to make sure that we are creating an information hub that captures and works for both people working remotely and people working in an office face to face. So this hybrid working model, I think, is opening up a huge gap here around how we fill that in for giving the people the same experience, whether they're at home or at work. Microsoft Teams is fantastic for that from a working point of view and collaboration point of view. Opens up the doors for that, but there's still that gap. We can fill it with using SharePoint and our intranets and so on, but again, it's got to have that relevant information in. Where I think something that excites me around this is Viva Connections. So for me, Viva Connections is bringing an aspect of the new world of intranets, the new world of a hub as such. Because some of the tools within here are going to open doors that people haven't been able to do before. But people are going to really need to think about how to use this to make sure it is relevant, to make sure we're going back to those top 10 things and ticking those off to make sure we're addressing those in this new world. So as we know, the big focus around Viva Connections is the personalization, the information that's relevant to you, which sounds great. Sounds brilliant that we're going to have a hub site that we can go into, and that information in there is going to be relevant to me as a worker. I can go in and I'm going to surface the stuff that's relevant to me. But how does an organization also push the information that they need people to see that might not be relevant to them? How do we create that window as such to surface some of this stuff? So we've got that aspect of how we're going to bring in some of these new things, but also overcome some of the problems we've faced before. So Viva Connections is this new technology. Microsoft have done an amazing marketing campaign around this, because in hindsight, it's giving you a portal through to SharePoint. The technology behind the scenes is SharePoint technology, and that's what we're surfacing through the Viva Connections app. We're able to either create a brand new communication site, or we can surface an existing one through our Viva Connections app. I can see, Sunny, there you've asked the question around, do you need an existing SharePoint intranet to use Viva Connections? Don't need an existing one. You can create a brand new one if you want to. And I'm going to run through some of the things we need to do when we're thinking about deploying Viva Connections. But you do need to have your intranet in SharePoint. It needs to be, I'll go through the prerequisites around it in a couple of slides. But this is where we can get intelligent. So Viva Connections is bringing in these new things. Some of it isn't available right now, but the new things coming in around the adaptive cards and creating your dashboard, which then is personal to you. And that's where this gap is going to get the bridge on how to do that. So that's the key thing, isn't it? Displaying that information that is relevant to you, giving your site that purpose, making sure we're getting buy-in from the people above and really pushing that right information out. But also we need to think about the accessibility side of things as well. So SharePoint is great for its accessibility. It's fantastic for some of the stuff it does in there with the inbuilt immersive reader and so on like that. But when we're looking at creating that new environment, we need to make sure that we are keeping accessibility at the forefront of what it is we're doing. And the needs come in different ways. I just want to show this slide because I think this is a really powerful slide around the different levels of disabilities that some people may face. And we need to make sure that when we are creating these sites, we're creating them to make sure that we're including everyone within the organization. So whether there is learning or visual or other forms of disability, we need to make sure that we're not overloading things. We need to make sure we're putting alt text on all our information there. We need to make sure we're building a site that has the right themes, the right color contrast, has the right layout and so on, that makes it accessible for our people to use in our organization. If we're looking at setting up Viva Connections, just to go on something you raised there, Sunny, around some of the things you need. So to set up Viva Connections, you do need to be a SharePoint administrator in your organization. So you do need admin level access to do this. You also need to be a Microsoft Teams administrator as well, because you'll have to create an app within Teams. Your SharePoint site, so your intranet, does need to be built in modern SharePoint, and it does need to be a communication site. So if you use classic SharePoint or a previous version of SharePoint, you would need to migrate that, build it into the modern world of SharePoint. It does need to be a communication site, not a team site. You do need to turn on global navigation. So that's a new thing that's come out recently in SharePoint, is around turning on global navigation, which gives you a new navigation way of down the left-hand side of navigating through your SharePoint. Again, gives you that bit of personal aspect to it. You need to configure a home site within SharePoint. So this is where a site in your SharePoint becomes a landing site within SharePoint. So through that global navigation, when you click on the home link, it takes you directly to that home site. And then you do need access to SharePoint Online Management Shell. So you do need some extra level of access. So if you don't have access to install things on your device through PowerShell and so on, you do need that level of access. So there are quite a few things you need to have in place for setting up Viva Connections. I know not people in your organization, you might not have SharePoint admin access, might not have Teams admin access. You might not even have admin access to your device to install things through PowerShell, but you will need those different levels. Not going to go through the full ins and outs of setting up Viva Connections, but what you do need, you need to have that home site. So you need to connect using the SharePoint Online Management tool. Then you need to set that home page. You need to enable that global navigation within there, which I can show you where that setting is. You need to download the Viva Connections app. So I'll put the link in on how to do that in the chat at the end. So you need to download the app. Microsoft has very nicely created the app for us, so we don't need to configure it and so on. You can customize it if you want to through the options in the app. But you run a script and it creates the app for you. You just point the script to your different SharePoint elements and that works for you. And then you then have to upload that into Microsoft Teams, and then you can deploy it, which is why you need that admin level within Teams to be able to do just that. So let's have a look then at an example of creating a Viva Connections site. So let me just go into Teams here. So I'm using Teams on the web. Doesn't matter if you're using Teams desktop mode or whichever one you use in the app. But if I go into here, I've then got this Viva Connections deployed. If I click onto Viva Connections, it then takes me through to my Hable Hub as such. So this is a demo of this. It's not a full working one, but this is like a demo intranet. And as you can see, the information in here is more relevant to me. So when I come in here, the first thing it's doing is surfacing news. Straight away at the forefront of this is surfacing news. What you can do in SharePoint though is you can use what's known as audience targeting. So I can target my news at the correct people. So when I'm creating these news articles, so let's say I work in a comms team. If I'm creating this news article in a comms team, I can point that news to the correct people in the organization. I can do it to everyone. I can do it to different departments. So then it's more specific to them. I can, if I was in my department and I have access to, I could post news that's only relevant to my team. And then this could be surfaced within this environment here, and it's going to produce that's relevant to that particular audience. What I've seen as well is people create like the forefront is news that's relevant to you, and then create another web part that is organization news, but the focus isn't on that organization news. It's there for you to see, but in your line of sight is the news that's relevant to you that gives you that access. If I just scroll down in here, then it's got events that are relevant to me. It's got some links to different things, but then this is where it gets intelligent. And for some reason, this isn't working, so I'm going to go in and try and fix this. But this is where you can bring in Yammer, and you can have this Yammer conversation that's surfacing the information in Yammer that's relevant to you. And I think this is where it gets powerful. This is the bit that's more bespoke to you. So we've got things like accessing emails, accessing your tasks, accessing recently done documents. If my YAML web part was working, and I'm just going to go into edit just to see why it's not working. But if my YAML web part was working, then this should show me, there we go, that's probably why. Let me, it's not gonna work. But anyway, if my YAML was working, then it would display all my YAML conversations in here that are relevant to me. So surfacing that in here, that social aspect. What's not out right now is the adaptive cards and the dashboards. So when that comes out, which is supposed to be end of summertime, I think, but when that comes out, that's when you're going to really take the benefits of that personalization, because you're going to be able to surface more of that personal aspect within here, because you're going to be able to create these dashboards of different items that are more relevant to you as a person, that is bringing that information to the forefront. So I know you're going to be able to bring in things from insights. You're going to be able to bring in from third-party applications. You're going to be able to bring in things from your to-dos, tasks, planners, and so on. That then this is going to become your hub of things for you, but also that plugs into your organization side of things. You've then got a nice navigation to access the different policies, the different information, and streamlining that down so it's easy to do. If you haven't got an intranet set up in SharePoint, if you haven't done that before, it's very, very simple to do. So if I just throw up SharePoint here and go into SharePoint, if I wanted to start creating a site, I can go to the create site, and I want to make sure I'm creating that communication site. What was available to me a couple of days ago, which has disappeared, which has annoyed me, is that when I went in to create a site, it brought up templates, and you had these templates that are Microsoft-based templates, but also templates that are organization-wide templates. So it could be that you create these templates so people can create SharePoint sites, and they're pulling in your themes and so on. Just going to go to the Microsoft lookbook, because this is where you can get templates from as well. So this site's actively available for anyone. And what this site does, it brings in all these different SharePoint templates. So it means you don't have to think about the design elements. If you're not a designer, don't worry. You've got these templates you can use. So if I go into view the designs, and let's say I wanted to do a news site, go into news, you can see it's got the template there for me. It's telling me what it's going to do, and I can add that directly from here to my tenant. Again, you need to be a SharePoint admin to do this, but you can add it to your tenant. If I wanted to use a template, I still can. So I could create my site, create the blank site, and I'm going to do true Blue Peter style here, and go into one I did earlier, go into this site. What you can do when you've got a site created is you can actually access that site template. I don't know why it's moved, not sure why, but when I went to create a new site the other day, I had access to the templates, and I could deploy them directly from that page without having to go off and find them afterwards. But you can see I could add to click on that template. I can view it here and think, actually, yeah, that looks nice. I'll use that, use the template, and then it will apply that template over the top of my current SharePoint site. So you can see it's done a bit of color branding. It's created a template menu for me, little hero web part, some nice links, and it's got all this information in here done for me. I can then just go in and I can change it, create the relevant information in here, and so on. If I want to apply themes to this, maybe I don't like the purple. In my cog, I can go to change the look, and I can change my SharePoint themes. You are restricted to what SharePoint offers, but you can create your own theme. So I've got black and I've got dark gray here. So I've got my own themes that I've built into SharePoint, and you can see we can apply those. There's a fantastic site out there called Fluent UI Theme Designer. And what you can do, you can add in your primary and text color, your background color, and then it shows you what that looks like. It shows you the different aspects of the theme. It tells you if the accessibility is clear, if there's any clashes, non-accessible pairs, contrast, and so on. So you get access to see that. If I'm happy with how that looks, I can export it. And then I can export it as a code. Gives me the PowerShell script if I need to run the PowerShell script, and so on. So then I can go and use SharePoint PnP and I can import that theme. Really, really simple. I'm no coder, never say I am, but I can even do this. So this is really, really simple to be able to apply a theme using SharePoint PnP to your SharePoint environment. And then when you go into that change look, you can see then you get those company themes where you can apply those themes you've set. If you wanted to use a template, wanted to add in your own theme, then you can see it adds bits in here. If I was to edit this page of the sites, this is my landing page. I've got the aspects of the new things that are coming recently. The vertical section is very new, and the full width section, setting you up for that Viva Connections aspect. There's a few new web parts that are coming. So my feed is that one I showed where it's showing you content that's personalized to you. So your emails, your tasks, your so ons. You've got lots of different web parts. I know what these are going to change. Lots of new ones are going to come in, I think, once the next part of the Viva Connections deployment happens. So these are going to be brought in. But I think this is how we're going to crack that intranets failing. Building that successful one is making sure that that content we're putting in is more relevant, is more bespoke to people. So let's look at the news, for instance. When we're doing the news, we can filter the news. We can enable that audience targeting. So then that news is specific to those certain audiences that we are publishing those news articles to. We could, even if we wanted to, create so if we're not using audience targeting, we could create a news bit that is relevant to different departments and filters it down like organization wide, and you can put those keywords in there around it. If you're using metadata, for example, against those news articles, then you could surface the particular articles that have that metadata on them, which then can surface that for people. So let's say you wanted to categorize comms that was org wide that needed to be highlighted in a certain way, you could filter that through here. Again, you're not pushing everything into people, you're surfacing that information that is relevant to those different people. So I think that's where we're going to crack this around it. And I think the aspect of Teams, the aspect of Yammer, the aspect of SharePoint through Viva Connections is where that bridge is going to be formed on creating that successful intranet, because no longer people are going to land in that intranet and going to be, oh, I can't find anything. Oh, I don't know why that news is showing it for me, or I don't know how to navigate. Where's that information I want? It's going to surface that things that's relevant to them. You've got the use of Yammer to use that social aspect that's going to bring that in. You've got the use of Teams, which can point people in that aspect of so on. We see we've got a comment there about in a customer pitch for a local newspaper, we should tell them to integrate Twitter and RS feeds in SharePoint and Teams. Exactly that. So you can add in those Twitter feeds, you can add in RSS feeds, you can embed external content and actually create. So what, rather than intranet, I think intranet is very dated. It's almost a hub that you're creating for people now. It's a hub of resources that we can bring in here. So rather than saying, oh, I'll go and find it on the intranet and can't find it, it's actually, well, I'll go into my hub and this hub has all the content, has all the information that I need. You've got Teams for your working aspect. You've got Viva Connections then surfacing that other information you need access to. In an ideal world for me, people would land in Teams. They wouldn't leave Teams. They'd be in Teams all day long. They wouldn't need to go into, open up a web browser and go off other places, because what they need to be doing is all in there. And that's, I think that's the goal that organizations need to get to. Yes, Outlook is still going to be used. Never going to get away from that, but we shouldn't be going into it so much. I think Teams is going to surface that, and I think Viva Connections is really going to help bridge that gap on it. So that's it from me, really. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments around that, questions and so on. Be really interested to see what other people's views and opinions are on this. If anyone wants to raise their hand or use the chat. Okay, so we've got Philip. Do you want to go? If you see you raise your hand.
I have a short question. I'm doing a lot of customer pitches in the past, and my question is, how do you prepare for a customer pitch? What you showed, because I posted it in the Teams chat. We made a pitch in for a local newspaper, and we created a completely showcase for this customer, prepared for the special interests of the customer side. How do you do it? What's your opinion? Build extra showcase for special customers, or do you stuff like a Contoso environment?
Yes, good question. We do build like an example as such. Around it, so we have like I guess like a showcase kind of example of what it could look like. Some of the try and like demo the best aspects of what SharePoint offers and what Viva Connections can offer, and then talk about what the customer needs are around it and find out from them. And sometimes we even demo it live on that customer sales pitch. So even going through. So for an example, I was working with an ambulance trust not long ago. And we were talking about a hub for them and a central location. And one of their big requests was about traffic updates. They find it really hard for their ambulance people to find out about traffic updates. And is there any way to bring that in? And it got me thinking, like, well, how could that be done? And what you can do, as you know, you can bring in embedded links into SharePoint. So one of the things you could do on Waze, an application, traffic application Waze, is actually bring in the embedded link. And it could pick up where your location is, and then that was on that SharePoint page. So straight away they're like, "Wow, that's one little thing." It was like, "Wow, that's won us over," and all it was embedding a third-party website into there, because it's like showing them actually you can surface that content in here. You don't have to go off to Waze.com and put in your location and so on. This is actually bringing it to the surface for you. So I think trying to make anything that's relevant to them. I mean, your example about bringing in those different news aspects through RSS feeds and so on is perfect. So anything you can do that's more relevant to that customer or that area that they work in, so their sector or whatever it may be, I think would really help them.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. The interesting thing was they have the photograph colleagues and newspaper writers and all the different stuff. And the interesting thing about it, they need so much information, like sports news. They have thousands of websites they are looking for and watching. And I think why they didn't use RSS. I did it 20 years ago, like a feeling. They didn't know about RSS feeds.
Yeah. Yeah, so sometimes it's the simple little things that really help some people out there.
Yeah. Sorry, I have to go for the door bell.
No worries. Robert, you raised your hand.
Yeah, first of all, Paul, thanks very much for the presentation. Very enlightening. When we started rolling out Teams, first of all, I work for a tier 1 automotive supplier based in Europe. So we have a large number of factories and a huge number of people on M365 just from the office point of view. When we rolled out Teams, it was more of a start small and let it grow by natural means instead of doing a big rollout plan. And that worked for us quite well.
Okay.
Our current intranet is based on SharePoint with a third-party package over the top of it to give it that intranet look and feel, which now I think if Viva was available 4 years ago, we would have gone with Viva Connections for sure. Do you see that it would be possible to roll Viva out in that type of rollout, where you start maybe with one department and then keep expanding it as more departments say, "Hey, that's cool. We like that better than we like the corporate intranet. Can we join you and have it grow by osmosis?" Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So what you can do, because it's a Teams app, when you deploy the Viva app, you don't have to deploy it to everyone. You can specify who it gets deployed to. So something you could do is actually deploy it to an area of the business and have them access it through Teams and so on. Obviously, your home site will still point to that same place if people were going through the SharePoint element. But yeah, you could definitely do that. You could then do that, let it grow from that aspect, because really that home landing page in Viva is what you want, is the personalization bit, and then perhaps some of the links and other pages in there then go off to different areas. But yeah, I can't see why you couldn't do it that way, and let's say pilot it with a small area and then organically let it grow as people see it and people talk about it. And because you will get that word of mouth, you'll get people saying, "Oh yeah, access that through Viva. You're not seeing it." They're like, "No, what's that?" And then that's when that growth will start to happen.
Cool, thank you.
It's okay. Is there any further questions? I don't think there's anything in the chat. But if anyone hasn't got any further questions, I'll hand back to you, Adam.
Thank you so much, Paul. Great session. I find this all very interesting as well. I mean, we're not just struggling with intranet. It's kind of the same concept with like everything, like when we use Yammer and Teams, and how to get people to use it, and why the real purpose of it, and now it's all mixed together as well. So it's a very interesting. All right, Chris Hoard, are you ready for your session?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. Let me just go and get the screen shared. Do you want to call out when you can see that?
I can see it now.
Okay, perfect. So welcome, everyone. Thanks again for coming today. If you've never met me before, my name is Chris Hoard. I'm Partner Education Lead at Fusion here in the UK. And the session that I'm going to give today is called Let's Deploy Profile Plus, a Dataverse for Teams app. So hopefully this session will give you something to think about if you've not already started using apps that are based on Dataverse to Teams. So what to expect from this session: we're going to break it down into 3 parts. First of all, we're going to explain what Profile Plus is. Secondly, and the majority of this session, we are going to show how to deploy that into your Teams environment. This is essentially a walkthrough session. We're going to go and get hands-on as much as possible. Last but not least, we're going to have a small call to action at the end and some resources that you can take away today. But putting all of the 3 parts of this session together, the outcome is for you really to understand how to deploy and configure the Powerapps Profile Plus in Teams, or at least have a good idea in order to be able to get started. If you kind of got a good feeling by the end of the session, then we've achieved what we've set out to do. Now, about this session, the level is 200, is intermediate. In other words, you will need to know a little bit about Teams and the Teams Admin Center to be able to get the most from this session. The scope is as much on Powerapps as it is about Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft Teams is very much the container, the platform that we're installing in, as opposed to functioning on Teams functionality. In terms of demo, this is a demo heavy session, so it's 80%, but I've also just got to add the caveat to that because there is so much demo, there could be some pauses with the system for propagation time, but also as well, it is relatively high risk doing as much demo live as it were doing it canned, but I like to live dangerously, so we're going to see if it works out today. The caveat with this, you know, Microsoft Teams and Powerapps are rapidly changing. This session is going to be valid for 4 to 6 weeks. Underway with what Profile Plus is. So Profile Plus In short, I mean, there's been a bit written about it the last few months. So if when it was released at Microsoft Build, it's a Power App which can be used within Microsoft Teams. And it's one that's not integrated into Teams yet. You actually have to go to GitHub. You actually have to upload it into the Teams Admin Center. So it's a Power App that's currently in preview. It was released and announced at Microsoft Build earlier this year in May, alongside 2 other Power Apps. One of them is called Perspectives and the other one is called Boards. So Microsoft released 3 more Power Apps, and this is on top of Power Apps that you may have seen over the course of the last 6 or several months. So if you've seen incidents or if you've seen employee ideas, then Profile Plus is very much the same as them. And it's an app that's all designed to do really 3 things. Number 1, find out more about your colleagues, because Microsoft Teams doesn't do this out of the box. You sometimes don't know who you are getting put into a team with. So if I could find out more about my colleagues, find out more about their aspirations, what they like, particularly as I, like many of you, are working in a remote environment, then that would be great added functionality. In addition, Profile Plus can show the org structure, and it can also show open positions within inside the organization. We're going to see all of that today. But like those other Power Apps, like employee IDs and like incidents, this is what we call a sample app. And for ISVs, this really is a big opportunity, also for organizations that are into low-code, no-code application, because you can install it into Microsoft Teams and use as is, and it's good enough as that. Or alternatively, you can build on top of that. You can go and customize and extend it and add the functionality that you want to see within inside the application. One of the problems that Microsoft saw with a lot of Power Apps templates early on that it did was that organizations wanted something that is more finished, and then they have the choice whether they can either decide to use it then or then go on to do what they want with it. So this is one of the new generations. So there's a lot of opportunity here to either A, use as is, or B, go and develop it further. The choice is totally yours. Now, this app, like those other Power Apps, are stored in Dataverse for Teams. So Dataverse for Teams, okay, is the storage on each team that when you install the app is then put into Dataverse. Okay, Dataverse is a massive subject in itself, and I look forward to doing a deep dive session on Dataverse later this year. But today, let's get underway and see about installing this Power App into the environment. As said, it's currently in preview, so we won't be able to find it within the Teams Admin Center. So if I come into my environment and come up to kind of manage apps, if I try to find Profile Plus, you will not be able to see anything. So we need to go and download that off of GitHub before we do anything. And the URL there, aka.ms Teams Profile Plus. Alternatively, if you install the Power Apps app into your environment, okay, and go to the home page, you can click on Profile Plus and it will take you straight to GitHub. Now, when you're inside GitHub, okay, what we do is we click on this link here for Profile Plus, and then we're given a couple of options here. Now, which one do we actually select and download? Well, it's actually the Teams custom app. So if I click on the button in order to download, you can see that it's now downloading there onto my machine. Okay, I'm going to open that up. Okay, and there you can see that it's downloaded. So I've downloaded that zip onto my machine. Secondly, we now install that app into the Teams Admin Center. So we've got the kind of what it is that we actually need, the Power App. We need to install it into the Teams Admin Center. Now, for anyone not familiar with the Teams Admin Center, how do you get to it? Well, when you log on with your administrator permissions, you go into the Teams Admin portal, and from the Teams Admin portal, you then jump into Microsoft Teams, which is the Teams Admin portal. And when you get inside the Teams Admin portal, we want to come to this section here, which is called Teams Apps, and we spread it out. Now, before we install it, we want to make sure, if we go up to the top right-hand side and we click the org-wide app settings, that we've got the ability to be able to install custom apps, because it's not fully integrated with Microsoft. And if we install this Power App into the environment, it's going to be seen as a custom app as opposed to a Microsoft application. So in order to do that, what we do is we come to upload. Okay, we then select the file, and there we go. You can see there is my Powerapp. So I double click, and this will take a second, and you can see now that it's added Profile Plus to the list. So if I then click on and try to find Profile Plus, you can see that I can now find it. So if I click on Profile Plus, I can see some details about the application. It'll give me the description and the publisher and the scope. It'll give me a bit of information, the full description and what it does. You can then go and also see the permissions and settings. As you can see, there are none there at this moment in time. So we have installed it into our Teams environment. Now that's going to take a kind of a minute or so in order to propagate. So before we go to install the app into the team, I'm just going to do something on the side. I'm going to kind of almost have a step 2.5. I'm going to come back into my Microsoft 365 Admin Center. I'm going to come to groups, and I'm going to come to active groups. And what it is I'm doing here is I'm going to create a security group, and I'm going to show you kind of why I'm going to do this at a later stage. But I come to add a group, click on add a security group, and I click next. Okay, and I'm going to call this Profile Plus SG, give it a description. Okay, click next, and then I'm going to go ahead and create that group. So the new group has been created, and I'm going to click close. Now I'm going to come back to that security group because that's going to take a minute in itself to be able to create two. I'm going to go and see if it's now created within inside my Teams environment. So here is my team. I just click Teams on the left-hand side. It's the modern work team. So if I click on the three buttons and click on Manage Team, you can see that there are 5 people within my team. Okay, I own the team, and I've got Adam, and I've got Chirag, and Ma, and Vesku, and Amanda. They are all there. They are all part of the modern work team inside our organization, and we're going to kind of assume in a scenario that we are piloting this Powerapp within our team. We want to see it and kind of play around with it and see if it's going to work. So I go into general. If it doesn't appear first time, it might be because of the actual propagation. Okay, but as you can see now, this could be an area where it says app not found. So if so, okay, this could take a minute or two in order to be able to install inside the environment. So we just have to keep kind of refreshing at this point. And there we go. You can see that I can now add this application. And that's all we simply have to do. We have to click the button add. I don't want to post to the channel about it. We have to wait a second or so, add this app to the channel. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and click save. Now, what you're going to see here is you're going to actually see it installing, or what you're looking at is it's installing into the underlying what we call environment, which is Dataverse for Teams. So if I look inside the Power Platform Admin Center, okay, and I go to my environments, you can see that it's going to be installing right here. That is where it will install into. Going back to Teams, okay, you can see that it's going to take a couple of minutes, maybe kind of between 90 seconds and 2 minutes to actually install into the team. And what's important is that you don't have to kind of sit there and watch for it. I've done a couple of apps like this in the past, and they've taken the best part of kind of 20-25 minutes, but the kind of install time is much more improved. So you can literally go away and go and do other things and come back and it would install. So don't feel you have to kind of wait around for it to install. Now, as you can see, it's installed very quickly. I've got a notification down on the right-hand side that it's installed, and I will also have in the activity feed that it installed successfully. Now, the first time you access this, what is this? Well, it's the app itself is going to make a number of connections with inside your environment. It needs to use connectors to connect to other applications within the Microsoft 365 services. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to allow it. That's perfectly fine in order to be able to do it. And I just click continue and got it. OK, so I'm going to go to the team itself. I'm going to click on Profile Plus. I'm going to click on Got It. And there you can see, okay, all of the members of my team that I showed you earlier. Now, Profile Plus is an application that's designed to find out more about the team. Let me just dig into somebody on here. I'm going to dig into Vesku. So I'm going to click on Vesku. And here you can see that here is his profile. Now that profile is unfinished because when you first install this and set it up. Now, what's important to, let's move on to the new page because we're actually in the phase 2 of this. We're in the configuration. There are kind of 2 sides to this in order to be able to create somebody's profile in a team. The first side is configured in Azure AD by the IT admin. And the second side, so on the right-hand side, is configured by users within Microsoft Teams. So this is really a kind of a 2-part configuration from IT on the one hand and users on the other. So we have to kind of work together to complete the profiles within the Profile Plus application. Now, how do we do that? I'm going to go and click on my own profile, but I'm going to tackle this left-hand side first. That's the part that IT need to do in Azure AD. So where is it that they actually fill out this information? Because if they don't do that, then let me just take Mar's example here. There we go. Look, Mar hardly has anything in there. So IT needs to go and correct that. So we go back into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and this time on the left-hand side, we come down to Azure Active Directory. So here we go. I go to Azure Active Directory or users. I can kind of pick whichever one, and then I click on users. And just having a look here, you could kind of see that all the other users are filled out apart from Mar. So maybe Mar is somebody that kind of joined and her information hasn't been fully propagated into Azure AD, or maybe we've just forgotten about it as IT admins. What they should look like is somebody like Adam. So if I click on Adam, you will see here in Adam, Adam's got a photo. Adam has got a job title and a department and a company. He's got an employee ID. He's also got his contact info completely filled out. And that is what we need to do for every person who uses Profile Plus within Microsoft Teams. So just going back here and clicking on Adam, you can see that Adam is all completed right there. That is because Adam has got, or should I say, been fully completed within Azure AD, his profile information. So let me just go back on the users a second, and I'm going to click on Mar. In order to be able to complete this information, all I need to do at the top is go to Edit. I can go and add a photo of Mar in there. Okay, I'm going to put Modern Work Consultant and the department, okay, is Modern Work, and the company name is Teams Limited, and the employee ID is 000. I'm just going to give it a 10. And then I fill out her contact details. So I know Mar's in Spain, okay. Here you go. I'm just filling out the contact details. The state is Madrid. I'm going to call it Plaza, somewhere I know within Madrid, Plaza Mayor. And I'm just going to give it a zip code. And I can never remember the phone number for Spain. I'm just going to give it anyone. And then I'm going to give her a mobile phone. There we go, just for example. Now you can see that I've completed our information, and then what I do is I save that information, and then, okay, it might take a minute or so, but if I try and actually load up Teams again, maybe it will kind of populate in time. There we go. You can see that that information on the left-hand side is now populated as we need it. Now, if I go back for a second, okay, as said, go back to my slide. The left-hand side is done. That was configured in Azure AD by my IT admin. Now what I can do in order to be able to complete my profile is go on and configure the part that I have to configure. So let me go back here. you can see I've got the edit button. So if I click edit, you can see that I can start to fill out some information about myself. So here I am, Regional Director of Teams Limited. Enjoy golf. Enjoy speaking at TeamsNation monthly meetup. So there's a little bit of information about myself. I can give myself a kind of an intro video. So if I have, you know, a video, for example, from YouTube, let me just go and grab a video. So here I am in YouTube. Let me just grab one. I'm going to put TeamsNation. So here's TeamsNation. Okay. Is I grab the URL and I pop it into the intro video. I can then put in my LinkedIn. And then I can also put what current projects I'm working on. Now, if there's no projects in there, I can actually add projects. So currently I'm working on the Teams setup project. And I'm working on the Teams adoption project. But then if I come to the drop down, I can actually highlight or put several in of several projects that I'm currently working on. And I can do the same with expertise. So if I put Teams, Powerapps, SharePoint, you know, anything in it. And it doesn't necessarily need to be Microsoft 365 applications, obviously, but you can actually add your expertise. So you can see how rich this is becoming. Now, this is just a little bit about me. I can also put some goals in here, you know, so here's some goals that I want to do in my life. Okay. As you can see, there's a lot around traveling in terms of what I want to do. And I can also say in my interests as well. So we're building up a really rich profile. It doesn't have to be bullet points. You can, of course, type a little bit out. So IT, reading, I like a bit of philosophy from time to time too. You'll also see this on what's called open positions. Now, what is that? Well, open positions is when you know that there is a job going, for example, inside your team or your organization, then you can create those open positions too. So here's an open position. There's a consultant inside my team. My job link, again, I can put it, direct it to somewhere like LinkedIn. And the job description. Okay. And then I've added it. Okay. Once done, I can then go and then save at the very end. Okay. So I'm just going to remove that one and click save. So you can see it takes a minute or two, but look, I've now got on the left-hand side all of my contact details, my goals, my interests, okay? And I will also have open positions that are linked to me as well. And that is far richer than anything that I've had previously in Teams before. So Profile Plus really gives us a lot more deeper information than I had done previously. Because if I go back to the experience, clicking on the three dots and going to manage team, there is nothing here which I can see anything more about that person. I've got maybe their email, but I don't know very much about them. And if I'm new, for example, and I've just started working out inside the organization and I've just started remote, I want to be able to feel closer to other people inside my team. And this really is Profile Plus. It gives us that richer. I can, you know, if I click on my profile, I could even see a video about myself that explains a little bit more about who I am and what I do. And that's the whole thing about Powerapps. It's building on top of the out-of-the-box functionality within Microsoft Teams. That's really the key to Powerapps and why Teams is a platform. That narrative of Teams as a platform has been ongoing for some time. Now, we've configured it, okay? So we do that for every single one. So our IT admins configure Azure AD, our users configure Microsoft Teams. Now, if people within inside my team haven't actually done it, then I can request that they actually do it. So let's just take Amanda, for example. I can request her to update her profile in order to be able to give her a reminder that this needs to be doing. So people with inside your team can police themselves, okay? Then also what you can do is you can select people to connect with. So Adam, and I can start a chat or start a meeting, but I could already do that if I just click on Adam. So if I clear the selection and I click on his profile, I can also start a chat or call or even schedule a meeting. Now, we've configured all of our profiles within our team are set up. The third phase is really organizing and distributing. So the sixth step after we've configured all of our profiles is to be able to create our org chart. Now, how do we actually do that? Well, again, this goes back to the IT admin. If I go back into Azure AD, so here I am in Azure AD, and I'm in Mars profile. Now, let's say that I'm Mars manager. How do we actually do that so it reflects that within Profile Plus within Microsoft Teams? Well, all we need to do is fill out this field here, which is called manager. So you can see that it's blank at the moment. You click change, you find the person, okay? So Mars boss is myself, and then you click save. Then I'm going to do that for somebody else, okay? I'm going to have Adam, you click edit, and then you do exactly the same thing. So let's say Ma, you click select, and then you save. So I've done that with a few people now. I've actually set the kind of hierarchy. So I am Ma's boss, Ma is Adam's boss. Now let's go back in, click enter. Okay. Now, if you were to click on Ma, okay, now you can see that the view is starting to change. So we've got Ma, right, and all of Ma's profile information. You can see that Ma's boss is at the top, so you can see that my profile starts to appear above hers, and then Adam's appears below her. So Adam's a direct report to Ma, and it's going to reflect that within the Profile Plus application within Microsoft Teams. So this is really cool. We've got all our functional information on the left-hand side. We've got all of the information such as our about us, a video about us, our goals, any open positions and interests. And we can also see where we are in our kind of org structure. So that, I think, you know, is really, really effective. It's a functionality that I personally really, really like. Now, up until this point, we've all talked about, okay, the team and seeing this within a team. So we've deployed the app, we've configured Azure AD, we've configured it in Microsoft Teams, all the profiles. We've gone back to Azure AD and set out the org structure of that team. But now what we're going to do is we're going to actually roll it out to the wider organization in order to be able to use. And this is really clever. So how do we do this? Well, remember I created a security group earlier. So what I do is I come back inside the 365 admin portal. You can see here, okay, if I refresh, there's my security group that's been created. And then what I do is I'm going to add a group owner. Okay, so I'm going to add myself, Finette. So there we go. I'm going to go back. I'm going to then start adding members. Okay, so not owners, but members. And I'm going to add several more. I'm going to add. So you can remember originally there was only 5 people in that team. I'm going to add everyone inside that team. So there's 9. I'm going to click add. And so you can see now that my security group contains everyone within inside my organization. That's just now saved. So that is the next step. Now, the reason we need to do that is because we need to configure the Power App for what we call a broad distribution scenario. We need to share it with the whole of that security group so that other people outside of the team can use Profile Plus within Microsoft Teams. Now, that sounds complex, but I'm going to show you, and it's relatively easy. So let me get back into the demo environment and get back into Teams. Here we are within Teams. And on the left-hand side, you can see that we have Powerapps. I've pinned it to the left-hand app rail. So I'm going to click on Powerapps. Here we go. I'm going to then go to Build. Okay. And then I'm going to go to Installed Apps. And you can see that I've got the Perspectives app there because I needed to have a dry run really before this. And then I've got the Profile Plus application. Now what I do, okay, is I then go and I share it with colleagues. And this originally shows the team you deployed it in, okay? But what we need to do is add the security group there. So I'm going to call this Profile, and there we go. Look, it's showing up. That's why I needed to create it early, so I'm guaranteed that this is going to show up. Then I click Save. Okay. Now what that's done is that will mean, there we go, success, and everyone within that group, so everyone within inside that whole organization can now install that app. But first, before they do that, they are going to need permissions. Now, what does that mean? They're going to need permissions. Well, you can't just install the app and then people that haven't got permissions on it can use it. They can't. You need to be able to determine the permissions. So what you do is you click Seal, okay, and then you go to the tables themselves. So this actually defines the experience of the Profile Plus application. Now, what you need to do, okay, is you need to go through each of these, okay, and manage the permissions and determine the permissions of the group because they are none by default. So I'm going to give everyone within inside the organization full access. I mean, you might decide to do lower than that, but this is just for demonstrative purposes. And you need to do that for every single table that's within here. So as you can see, look, if I go down to the group that I've shared it with, that's none. I'm going to save that. And the next one, okay, do the same thing. So this is a bit repetitive, but luckily there's only 5 tables in order to be able to manage these permissions on. So there we go, full access. And the last one, okay, manage the permissions. There we go, that's already full access. Oh, manage the permissions, back again, there we go. So now everyone within inside the organization, okay, has the ability to be able to install. This is what I want them to do, but they might not have access to that team, right? So how do they install that application? Now I'm going to refresh Teams, and this is the part where I'm kind of crossing my fingers that this shows up. So here we go. I go down to Apps on the left-hand side, okay? I then come up to something called Built for Your Org, okay? And it has turned up. So if I tried to install this, if I just click on Apps, let me go back a step. If I go back to, and I search for that app, okay. Now I click on that app, it says add to a team. I've not got any way to add that as a personal app to the app rail, right? So I can't do it, or I think I can't do it through the store. But if I click on Built for Your Org, and then under Built for Your Colleagues, there is a unique instance of it, okay? And this is by design because you can essentially install this multiple times into multiple teams inside your environment. But you click on underneath Built as Your Colleague, you click on this one, and then you add it, okay? So if I click the drop down, add to a team or add to a chat, I am simply going to add it to the rail on the left-hand side. And then you can actually right click and then pin. So now, okay, this gives a different view. This gives you the full view of anyone, okay, within inside your organization. So let's just, like, for example, do a search here. So somebody that wasn't in the team, let me go back to the users. I'm going to highlight somebody that wasn't in the team. Okay, Marco wasn't in the team. So now I'm going to do a search for Marco, okay, and it finds him. Because the scope, you've broadened the scope from the team to the whole organization. And then I can find out information about people outside my team and across my whole organization. And again, the org structure applies, those open positions apply. This works across the whole organization. So I'm really, really happy that that's worked, because the last time I demoed this, it didn't, and I didn't quite pull it off, and it was quite disappointing. So we've deployed it, we've configured it for the team, and now we've organized and distributed that app across the whole organization. And because I put the permissions of that security group on the tables, every single person in my organization can open Profile Plus as a personal application. To finish off, okay, we think about extending and securing the app, because I've shown you kind of 99% of the functionality of that application. It's a very kind of, I would say, narrow application in terms of it does what it says on the tin. It's simple, but it's effective. But we did also say that it was a sample app. So what does that mean? That means that we can extend it. So how do we actually do that? Well, all we need to do is to go into Powerapps, go to build, okay, go to installed apps, and then what we would do is actually click on the application, and then what that would do is that would launch, so getting things ready, that would actually launch Powerapps Studio, where you can then go and start to extend your application with the new functionality that you would need. Once you've actually built upon that and you're to a version 2, you would export it, and then you would install it over the top with inside the Teams admin center. So that takes a while. So I think most of you should be familiar with that. Last but not least, we've got environment and table security. So in other words, okay, making slight tweaks, okay, to the security of the application. Now, environment security, you can have a look at this in admin.powerplatform.microsoft.com. That really refers to data loss prevention. And what we see here is data policy. So I can go in here, I can set up a data policy and make sure that when developers are extending my application, they can't use specific connectors for that app to connect to other applications within Microsoft 365 or outside of it to third-party applications. So that's really important, because what you don't want is, you don't want, you know, if you've got a rogue developer, they could install a connector to that application to something outside of Microsoft 365, and then suddenly your data is then taken into the third-party application, and that's a data leakage on your hands. So you'll want to come into this environment, you will want to apply a data policy. So we would create a new data policy. I'm just going to call this data policy, and then click next. And then you could state the connectors that you want to be able to use in that environment at the time. Okay, some of these you can't block, such as the Microsoft ones, but you can block a lot of the third-party ones, which will prevent that data leakage scenario. So environment security is quite important. The other type of security, of course, is the permissions, the table security. So if I come back into Powerapps, there we go. That's a view of the Powerapps Studio when you're extending the application. So if I go back to home and I go back to build, okay, and I go back to installed apps, and then I go back to see all, because I want to show my tables for my application, I would just review what the kind of permissions that people have. So if I click on manage permissions, members of the team, so owner always has full access, but the members need full access. I might say, no, I only might want members to be able to have collaborative access. You'll need to go away after this and have a look at exactly what those permissions do, but you might not want to give people full access. So let's say, as an owner, I'm the only kind of person that wants the full access. I would give collaboration permissions to members and to the wider people within inside my organization. and click Save. So I would determine that for each table, and it's important to go through and have a look at the documentation and see what each table does. But to be fair, you can experiment with inside your own environment too. So I just don't want people forgetting about secure. I mean, it's great to have the productivity gains. You can see it's really easy to install, but we also need to make sure that when we deploy it, that it's secure. So environment and table security when using Powerapps for Dataverse for Teams apps is really, really important to do it first time when you install the app. So that's it. Okay, some calls to action and resources. Number 1. Go and deploy Profile Plus. I've shown you how it is done, and I've shown you how to do it in basically 30 minutes. That's how long it takes. You can do it today. You can configure it for your team. When you're happy with it and everyone's done their profiles, you can then move it out to the rest of the organization. But this application, Profile Plus, is just one of a number of Powerapps. You've also got perspectives, you've got boards, you've got employee IDs, you've got incidents. There are a lot of applications that Microsoft are doing. If I jump back into this to the Powerapps environment and I go to home, then look, there are 8 of them that you can use. Bulletins is a great one. Employee IDs is a great one. I've written a lot of blogs. I know that Adam and Vesku have written blogs on these too. But there are 8 really great Powerapps. Now, 5 of them, these 5 up the top, you can they're already integrated with inside Teams. So you don't need to have to go to GitHub, download and upload them. That's only for these, you know, Profile Plus boards and perspectives, the 3 that were announced to Ignite. And after a few months, okay, you won't need to do that because they'll move to GA when they will be integrated with inside Teams and the App Center too. So go and get hands-on. I mean, I can't recommend this enough. In terms of resources moving forward, you'll have the recording from this session because it goes up on our YouTube site, so you can look through this again and almost do a step-by-step. You've got April Dunham. She done a great video on it as well. So, you know, it's always good to get a couple of people's perspective just to see if they're doing consistent practices. You've got docs.com. You also have the Power Platform and the Teams community. I've also written a blog, a walkthrough, a step-by-step guide on Microsoft365pro.co.uk. So if you want to kind of just in your own time read through, have a look at the screenshots, it's exactly what I've shown today. So we're into the outcome. We broke it down into 3 parts. Number 1, we looked at what Profile Plus was. Profile Plus is a Powerapp that today is in public preview. You go and get it from GitHub, you install it into the Teams Admin Center, and then you can start using it in Teams. It's designed to be able to give richer profiles for your users, both within your team, so one scope is the team, and your wider organization. And that's really important because we like to know more about other people that we're working with in the team. And it's really cool that you can go and click on a video and see a little bit about them or see what their goals are or what their interests are. It just might be the thing that starts that conversation and makes you feel more part of the team. Teams does not do this out of the box. That's what Powerapps are designed to do. Build on top of Teams as a platform and extend the functionality. We looked at the how. We went through 10 easy steps to do a really kind of streamlined, easy deployment, which I don't think is too taxing from a technical perspective. And that was the majority of the session. I wanted it to be very practical. Last but not least, we had a quick call to action and some resources that you can walk away with. I hope that we've achieved our outcome, which is how to deploy and configure the Powerapps Profile Plus within Microsoft Teams. It's only been kind of 35 minutes, but I hope you're walking away thinking, yeah, this is something I'd like to look into, as well as those other Powerapps too, because I could have a use for them in my business or my customers' businesses. So I'd like to say thank you, a big thank you very much. It's always a pleasure when you come along. It's been a long time since I've spoken at the user group. I think it's been like a year. Adam and I used to speak regularly when we very first started. We do less of it these days. But after the last TeamsNation conference, I wanted to get back to speaking at a few user groups and being in the field. So it's a real pleasure to be back I'm really busy for the rest of the autumn period. I'm speaking a lot of other places, and I'm sure you are all as well. So I just want to say thank you for coming today. Is there any questions, Adam? Have we got any questions in the chat or that I could possibly answer?
Yeah, there are. I think there are a few.
Okay.
We have one from David here. Is any of the information I have already added to Microsoft 365 Delve added into Profile Plus?
No, not at this moment in time. I mean, well, not out of the box, should I say, anyway. So as shown in there, that it pulls from Azure AD and information that you put into Teams, which is information that essentially goes into is stored in a tables, which is Dataverse for Teams. So it's a mixture of those two sources. I'm sure that if you look to extend the app, so if you look to custom develop that, so you, as we showed, you go in through Powerapps, you go into the app, into Powerapps Studio, I'm sure you could connect it to information for Delve. And that's a really important point, because some people will say, look, this is a great start, but I want to kind of do my own thing and move it beyond it. So it'd be interesting to see if you take that, deploy it, and then see if you can pull some of that information from Delve through into it. It'd be a really interesting. I'd be interested to read it.
Yeah, there's another question here. Yeah, it's a good one. I think you mentioned it later on, but it's a really good question in this case. Where is the information stored that is entered by end users as part of their profiles?
Like I say, that's that's actually stored in a table and is stored in Dataverse for Microsoft Teams. So that's where the information from the app goes. The app pulls through as you can see, some information it pulls through from Azure AD, but the other is in Dataverse for Teams.
Yeah. Also, is it multilingual as we operate in a bilingual environment, English and French?
A lot of the information, as you can see, was actually pulled from Azure AD or was put in through Microsoft Teams and was put into fields, for example. So if I go back, just go back into my environment. So I'll click on my team and I'll click on the Profile Plus. Let's take my application. Okay. So if I click on this one, for example, okay, then pretty much all of the information. So if I go to edit that, okay, all the information I put in was in English. So of course, everything in those fields can be put in other languages. From my understanding of it, when you install the application takes on the actual language that's set within inside Microsoft Teams. It'd be interesting to see and for you to let me know afterwards. So if, for example, you have a French user, okay, that when you install this application for them, so that's definitely something you'd want to test. The thing is about the English speaking world is I don't mind putting up my hands and saying we're quite lazy in terms of accommodating for other languages other than the English language. We of course tested it in English. I'm from the UK, so in the organization that I work for, we all English, but for the second languages and stuff like that, or to be able to speak, if you're a large organization with users all around the world, then of course you're going to want to make sure that this is multilingual. I do not think it's got a translate functionality. So in other words, if I was to enter that within, for example, English, so you can see here that I've put my goals and my interests in the English language, I don't think that is going to translate. So if you've got a mixture of users, half to speak English, half to speak French, for example, then if somebody French looks at an English profile, they're not going to see that within French. They're going to see that in the entered English. So I think that there's going to be some aspects about this that you are going to see that are not going to be supported. But again, if you are or if you have developers, it will be good to kind of test that out and see that if a translation functionality could be built on top of that. Again, I'd love to see that and to see that working in real life.
Last question here. Does it require a premium license for Powerapps?
No, it doesn't, right? So you can there's no licensing requirements, okay? In terms of anything out of the ordinary, what you've already got with inside a Microsoft 365 license, okay? I've done a little bit of testing on this, and you need a premium Powerapps license if, for example, you wanted to open the app directly within a web browser. Okay, so I think that is as far as my understanding is, and there's a lot of more people that are better at Powerapps licensing than I am. I think that for any application, if you need to see it in a web browser, you do need that premium license. But to be able to see it within Microsoft Teams, everything that you've seen here requires no premium licensing.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Chris. Great session, and I'm glad to see that demo gods were on par with you this time.
Yeah, Adam saw this one last time when the demo gods weren't so favorable, and it was a little bit of a disjointed session. So I'm really glad to say that this kind of came together this time around.
Yeah, keeps had me wonder what kind of sacrifice you made there for the session. Yeah, that's another question. All right. Again, thank you to both of our speakers. Yet again, I have this slide up here in case how you can get involved within our user group. As Chris already mentioned, this meeting will be uploaded to YouTube. I'll try to have that done in the next couple of days. So you can visit our YouTube channel on teamsnation.org/channel over there. Remember, we're on not all, but many social platforms, so feel free to follow us and join our meetup group as well. All right, before we close up, next meeting is in August the 16th, and I think we have the agenda set up already done here. Margin Summers, and we have Margin Summers speaking how to become a road warrior with Teams Mobile, and we'll see if we have yet another speaker as well. It's to be announced. So don't miss that. Put that in your calendar, or just join the meetup group, and you'll get notifications and a calendar invite and stuff.